Chinara wiped the sweat from her forehead as she arranged vegetables at the market stall. Her clothes were old, but clean. Her hands rough from work. Every coin she earned went to buying medicine for her sick mother. The sun burned above, but Chinara didn't complain. She was used to struggle. As she worked, she noticed him again. The blind man. He sat near the market gate, holding a wooden stick, dark glasses covering his eyes. His clothes were dusty. A small bowl sat beside him, empty as always. Children threw stones at him. "Go away, useless man!" they shouted, laughing. Chinara frowned. She walked over and shooed the children away. "Leave him alone," she said firmly. The blind man didn't speak. He simply lowered his head. Chinara sighed and reached into her basket. She placed a small piece of bread in his bowl. "It's not much," she whispered, "but it's better than nothing." For a moment the man stayed still. Then he nodded slowly. "Thank you," he said in a quiet voice. Chinara walked back to her stall. Behind her she heard people whispering. "Look at that foolish girl," one woman said. "She can't even feed herself, but she's feeding beggars." Another laughed. "Her mother is dying at home and she's wasting food on strangers." Chinara pretended not to hear, but their words stung. Still, every day, she brought a little food for the blind man. It felt right. One afternoon, her aunt, Auntie Rufai, arrived at the market. Her face was sharp, her eyes colder than usual. "Chinara," she barked, "why are you always near that beggar?" Chinara lowered her head. "He's hungry, Auntie." Auntie Rufai scoffed. "Hungry? Let him starve. You should be thinking about how to survive, not playing charity worker." "I can't ignore him," Chinara replied softly. Auntie Rufai grabbed Chinara's arm tightly. "You think kindness will save you? Your mother is dying, and you're busy feeding a blind fool." Chinara bit her lip to hold back tears. That night, at home, Chinara sat beside her mother's bed. The old woman coughed weakly, her skin pale and thin. "Mama," Chinara whispered, holding her hand. "I will find a way. I promise." Her mother smiled faintly. "You have a good heart, my child. Don't let this world change that." The next morning, Chinara searched her pouch. Only a few coins remained, not enough for medicine. When she reached the market, the blind man was there as always. But today something felt strange. As she placed bread in his bowl, she noticed how his hand reached out, too smoothly. His fingers didn't search like a blind man's would. They landed perfectly on the bread. Chinara's eyes narrowed. She watched him carefully. But he just sat there, silent behind his dark glasses. "Are you really blind?" she asked before she could stop herself. The man tilted his head. A small smile touched his lips. "Does it matter?" Chinara blinked, confused. Before she could say more, Auntie Rufai's voice rang out behind her. "Chinara, come here." Chinara hurried over. Her aunt pulled her aside, lowering her voice. "I've arranged a marriage for you," she said. Chinara's heart dropped. "What? With who?" "Chief Bako," Auntie Rufai replied, smiling wickedly. "He's old but rich. He'll pay a good bride price." "No!" Chinara gasped. "I won't marry him." Her aunt's smile vanished. "You will do as I say. Do you want your mother to die? We need that money." Tears filled Chinara's eyes. "There must be another way." Auntie Rufai slapped her hard. "There is no other way. You're nothing but a burden. At least now you'll be useful." Chinara ran from the market, her heart pounding. That evening she sat by the river, crying silently. She felt trapped, alone. Suddenly she heard footsteps. The blind man stood nearby, leaning on his stick. "How did you find me?" she asked, wiping her tears. "I may not see with my eyes," he said softly, "but I hear more than people think." Chinara looked away. "You shouldn't be here." The man sat beside her. For a while they said nothing. Then he spoke. "Sometimes those closest to us hold the sharpest knives." Chinara stared at him. His words cut deep, as if he knew exactly what she was facing. "Who are you?" she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Just a man watching the world." The next day, Chinara returned home to find her mother worse. She rushed to get medicine, but when she checked her hidden coins, they were gone. Auntie Rufai stood at the door, arms crossed. "Looking for something," she sneered. "I took it. You'll need to accept Chief Bako's proposal now." Chinara's knees buckled. You killed her." Her aunt shrugged. "Life is cruel, girl. Learn it." That night, her mother passed away in Chinara's arms. The funeral was small. No one cared. Auntie Rufai didn't even shed a tear. When it was over, Chinara looked for the blind man at the market. But he was gone. No one had seen him leave. No trace remained. Chinara felt more alone than ever. But, deep in her heart, a strange feeling grew. The blind man wasn't who he claimed to be. And something told her she hadn't seen the last of him. Chinara sat quietly in the corner of the room, staring at the floor. Auntie Rufai paced back and forth, her arms crossed tightly. "I said, Chief Bako is coming tomorrow." Auntie Rufai repeated, her voice sharp like a knife. "You will wear the dress I give you. You will smile, and you will agree." Chinara's lips trembled, but her voice was steady. "I won't sell my dignity, even if we starve." Auntie Rufai stopped and turned slowly, her eyes burning with anger. "Dignity?" she spat. "What has dignity given you? Nothing but hunger and shame." Chinara stood up, her fists clenched. "I'd rather suffer than marry a man old enough to be my grandfather." Without a glance, Auntie Rufai tossed the rusty key into her wrapper. "This house belongs to me now," she said coldly. "And you? You'll sleep where I tell you until Chief Bako pays your price." Chinara didn't argue. What was left to fight for? Her mother was gone. Her home, sold before her tears, could dry. And now, Auntie Rufai paraded her through the village like property waiting to be claimed. By midday, the whispers had started. "She's being sold to that old chief. Her aunt is clever, turning death into profit." Chinara kept her head low as laughter followed her. But Auntie Rufai made sure everyone saw her shame. "Better a rich man's wife than a hungry girl with pride," Auntie Rufai announced loudly at the market, waving her hand as if she were doing Chinara a favor. Every word was a dagger, but Chinara swallowed them all. She had no choice. That evening, Auntie Rufai threw a torn wrapper at her feet. "Get ready. Tomorrow you'll serve drinks at the festival. Let people see how useful you can be." Chinara picked up the cloth without a word. Behind her silence, a storm was building, but before the storm could break, a different whisper reached her ears. "Did you hear? The blind beggar vanished." "Vanished? I heard he was never blind at all." Chinara froze. Her heart pounded. They were talking about him. Fola. The man who disappeared the night her world collapsed. The man who, wasn't who he claimed to be. Chinara's fingers tightened around the wrapper. The village could laugh. Auntie Rufai could humiliate her. But deep inside, Chinara knew this story wasn't over. The festival came faster than Chinara expected. By sunrise, Auntie Rufai was already barking orders. "Tie that wrapper properly," You may be a servant, but at least look decent." Chinara wrapped the faded cloth around herself, her fingers moving slowly. Each knot felt like another chain tightening around her dignity. As drums echoed through the village, rich guests arrived. Dressed in bright fabrics, gold glinting under the sun, the poor lined up to serve, heads bowed low. Chinara carried a tray of drinks, weaving through the crowd. Every step reminded her of how far she'd fallen. "Faster, girl!" a woman snapped, clicking her tongue as Chinara passed by. She ignored it. She had learned that silence was safer than pride, but even silence couldn't prepare her for what happened next. As she turned toward the center of the courtyard, her eyes caught sight of someone entering the festival grounds. Her breath stopped. There he was, Fola. But this wasn't the beggar she remembered. No dusty clothes, no wooden stick, no dark glasses. He moved through the crowd with quiet confidence, dressed in fine but simple traditional attire. His sharp eyes scanned the festival like a man used to being respected. The tray slipped from Chinara's hands. Cups shattered against the ground. Liquid splashed across her feet. Gasps filled the air. Auntie Rufai's voice lashed out instantly. "Stupid girl! What have you done now?" But Chinara didn't hear. Her. Her world had narrowed to just one thing. Fola. He turned his head slowly, as if he had sensed her gaze. Their eyes met across the courtyard. And in that moment, Chinara felt every wound, every humiliation, every unanswered question rise to the surface. Fola didn't smirk. He didn't gloat. He simply smiled, calm, knowing. Then he began walking toward her. The villagers watched, curiosity turning into whispers. Chinara's heart pounded so loudly she could barely breathe. Auntie Rufai grabbed her arm, hissing, "Don't embarrass me further." But Chinara couldn't move, because the man she once fed like a beggar was now walking toward her like a king. Fola stopped just a few steps away from Chinara. The festival had fallen silent. Even the drums forgot their rhythm. Chinara could feel Auntie Rufai's nails digging into her arm, but her eyes stayed locked on Fola. "Come," he said softly, his voice no longer that of a beggar, but of a man who commanded respect. Auntie Rufai pulled Chinara back sharply. "She's busy. Go bother someone else." But Fola's calm gaze shifted to Auntie Rufai, and for the first time Chinara saw fear flicker in her aunt's eyes. "I wasn't asking," Fola replied, his voice still gentle but carrying the weight of someone used to being obeyed. Without thinking, Chinara stepped forward. Her legs trembled, but something stronger than fear pushed her on. Fola led her away from the crowd, toward a quiet corner, under a large tree. Chinara's mind spun. Questions fought to escape her lips, but her voice refused to work. Finally, Fola broke the silence. "You must be wondering who I really am." Chinara's throat felt dry. She managed to whisper, "You lied." Fola nodded slowly. "I did, but not to mock you." Tears welled up in Chinara's eyes, not just from betrayal, but from the weight of everything she'd endured. "Why?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Why pretend to be blind? Why sit there, letting people humiliate you?" Fola's eyes darkened, not with shame, but with memories. "Because I needed to know if kindness still existed," he said quietly. "I lost everything to people who only saw my wealth, family, friends, a woman I loved. They all betrayed me." His gaze softened as he looked at her. "Then I met you." Chinara's chest tightened. She thought back to every piece of bread she'd placed in his bowl, every time she defended him from cruel words. "I wasn't trying to prove anything," she whispered. "I know," Fola replied. "That's why you're standing here now." Before she could respond, A loud voice called out from the festival center. "Fola, the elders are waiting." Fola straightened his shoulders and looked at Chinara one last time. "Stay close. You'll want to hear this." And with that, he walked back toward the crowd, leaving Chinara frozen in place, her heart racing with fear. And something else. Hope. By the time Fola reached the center of the festival, the entire village had gathered. Elders sat upright, adjusting their robes. The rich guests whispered, trying to piece together who this powerful stranger really was. Chinara stood at the edge of the crowd, her hands shaking, heart pounding in her chest. Fola raised his hand. Silence. Even the wind seemed to pause, waiting for his words. "You all saw me," Fola began, his voice clear and steady. "Sitting at the market gate, blind, dusty, weak." Uneasy murmurs rippled through the crowd. Faces turned pale as people began to recognize him. "Some of you threw stones," Fola continued, his eyes scanning the villagers. "Some laughed. Most of you looked away." Auntie Rufai shifted uncomfortably, her lips pressed into a thin line. Fola's gaze found Chinara in the crowd. But one person didn't. Heads turned toward her. Chinara felt the weight of every stare, but this time she didn't lower her head. "This woman," Fola said, his voice filled with pride, "shared her food when she had none. She defended me when it brought her shame. She showed kindness without expecting anything." The villagers stood in stunned silence. The same people who mocked Chinara days ago now looked at her with wide eyes. Auntie Rufai's mouth hung open, her face drained of color. Fola turned back to the elders. "I return today, not as a beggar, but as a man blessed with fortune. And I choose to honor true wealth, the kind that can't be bought." Some villagers clapped awkwardly. Others lowered their heads in shame. Fola didn't smile. He wasn't here for applause. He walked through the crowd, stopping in front of Chinara. "I owe you more than words," he said softly, only loud enough for her to hear. "But today I give you back what they tried to take. Your dignity." Chinara's throat tightened. She could barely breathe. Fola offered his hand. For a moment she hesitated. Then, slowly, she placed her hand in his. Not as a servant, but as an equal. Behind them, Auntie Rufai stumbled back, collapsing onto a bench. Chinara didn't look at her. For the first time she looked forward. The festival ended, but the whispers didn't. By morning, the entire village had a new story to tell. "Did you see Fola? A beggar turned king. And Chinara. Who would have thought?" Chinara walked through the village with her head held higher than ever before. Not because Fola held her hand, but because, for once, no one could touch her dignity. But Auntie Rufai wasn't finished. When Chinara returned to her aunt's house, she found her few belongings tossed outside. "You think you're better than me now?" Auntie Rufai spat, her face twisted with rage. "Walking around like a queen because some rich man spoke your name?" Chinara stood tall, her voice calm. "I don't belong to you anymore." Auntie Rufai laughed bitterly. "You'll come crawling back when he leaves you. Men like him always leave girls like you." Chinara didn't flinch. Better alone than living under your roof. With nothing but a small bundle of clothes, she walked away, leaving Auntie Rufai screaming behind her. She didn't know where she was going. But for the first time, every step felt free. Later that day, a young boy ran up to her. "Fola wants to see you," he said, out of breath. Chinara followed the boy to the old community hall. Inside, Fola stood by a table, covered in papers. He smiled when he saw her. "I heard you stood up to your aunt." Chinara shrugged, a faint smile on her lips. I had nothing left to lose. Fola's eyes sparkled. That's where strength begins. He gestured to the papers. I'm starting a foundation for women like you. Women who deserve more than survival. Chinara's heart skipped. Why tell me? Because I need someone who understands struggle, Fola said. I don't want to give charity. I want to build something real with you. Chinara stared at him, unsure if this was another test. I don't want gold, she said quietly. I want to help others say no, like I did. Fola's smile widened. That's exactly why I chose you. Months passed, and the village watched in silence as Chinara's life transformed. No longer was she the poor orphan or Auntie Rufai's burden. She was now the woman leading a foundation, standing beside Fola, not behind him. Some villagers whispered with jealousy, others with quiet respect. But Chinara didn't care. Each day she walked through the same streets where people once mocked her, now with her head high, her purpose clear. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Fola stood beside her outside the foundation building. They watched young, women learning new skills, sewing, reading, building futures they never thought possible. Fola's voice broke the silence. I came here searching for kindness. I found it, but I also found you. Chinara turned to him, her heart steady, this time. Not as a test? Fola smiled. As my equal. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple hand-woven ring. Nothing flashy, just meaningful. I don't offer you gold, Chinara, he said softly. I offer you partnership, in life, in purpose. Will you marry me? Chinara felt tears sting her eyes, but this time they weren't from pain. She smiled, calm and confident. Yes, not because I need saving, but because I choose you. Weeks later, under the shade of the village's oldest tree, Chinara and Fola were married. The same villagers who once laughed at Chinara now watched with admiration, witnessing a union built on truth, respect, and shared strength. As they stood before the elders, Fola took Chinara's hand. After the blessings, Chinara leaned in with a playful smile. You pretended to be blind, but now I see clearly. Fola laughed softly, his eyes full of love. And I finally see what real wealth is. Together they faced the future, not as master and servant, not as savior and victim, but as two hearts that earned their place beside each other. If you believe kindness still matters in today's world, hit that subscribe button and share this story with someone who needs hope.